Hello, everybody. I was showing my shirt in case you wanted to know which video this was. Sometimes, I was wearing pink shirt last time, but sometimes I find videos by like, okay, which shirt was that person wearing? And I know a woman that changes different color shirts every week, or every day, I mean. Anyway, much love. My name's DrCherylMeier. We're going back to reading George MacDonald's book, At the Back of the North Wind, because it's so beautiful. I forgot to say some of the other videos that I came up with. This is just from meditating and praying. Cultivating Your Mystic Mindset. That's the name of my podcast. And I plan to add this for season 2. That's my plan. And season 1 was Evelyn Underhill. And all these people influenced C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis has been, since I was a child, a mentor of mine and like a father. And so he considered George MacDonald his master, a spiritual master who taught him all of the good things. Or he said, never was there a person, an author, more closely knit, basically, to the Spirit of Christ, the Holy Spirit. And so, but I welcome all faiths here. You can just enter into the story. Because your soul, like Plato says, has a memory. It has a memory of the good God that we came from, the divine love. And so let's just enter the story. We're talking about, you can start here. Don't worry about where you're starting whenever you got this. We're talking about a little boy named Diamond who we'll find out he was deathly ill and they thought he was dead. And he might have been so and came back though. We're at the chapter where he came back. He went to the back of the North Wind. And so the North Wind is his friend here, and we'll just go from there. I trust that that's enough. And so I hiked up here to the ocean so we could have this view. If the sun was shining more, it's early in the day. Sometimes I come here at sunset and the sun goes over there because I'm on the West Coast. But the sun's behind us right now, and so it hasn't burnt off the cloud layer yet. All right, but still, that's the ocean. I was getting quiet before I did this, and I was just listening. I think I can hear the waves echoing. Either that or the cars down there. I think it was the ocean. It sounded like it. Anyway, chapter 12, Who Met Diamond at Sandwich? And if you don't mind, put a like on this video if you can, wherever you're listening to it or watching it, because that indicates to others who only look with their physical eyes that this might be something for them to watch. That's how people measure it in these days. So I appreciate on all my videos if you take a moment to do that. All right, I just think it's a kind thing to do so that this video gets into the algorithm and all that stuff. But, I want it to be a free will offering, not a guilt thing. Okay, who met Diamond at Sandwich? He was down with his aunt at Sandwich, this British town. I haven't heard of it, but as they flew so fast. Oh, I read a little bit of this last time because we couldn't leave with him just going back, seeing his mom crying. I couldn't do that as a mom. I wouldn't, right? So, as they flew so fast they went that the sea slid away from under them like a great web of shot silk, blue shot with gray, and green shot with purple. They went so fast that the stars themselves appeared to sail away past them overhead, like golden boats on a blue sea turned upside down. And they went so fast that Diamond himself went the other way. As fast, I meant he went fast asleep in the North Wind's arms. Oh, I wonder if I have a picture. Yeah, here's a picture of the North Wind, but not with Diamond in her arms. There's lots of those in the last one. This book is from the 1800s, so it's free domain. And I was led to read it by all these different ways. Ways that I couldn't explain. Look, I took my shoes off. I'm barefoot. Okay. Wow. Just take a deep breath wherever you are. I encourage you. I'll go back right to the story, but what I was getting right before I started was just, wow, thank you, God, that no matter what horrible things you go through in this life, the ups and the downs, if you keep looking to divine love, to God, God will keep bringing you back to that steady ground. You know, Christ said that, build your house upon the rock, not on the sand, because when the storms come, the house on the sand just blows down. But if it does blow down, then you'll see your house was built on sand. Help me build it on the rock. When he woke, a face was bending over him, but it was not North Wind's. It was his mother's. He put out his arms to her, and she clasped him to her bosom and burst out crying. Diamond kissed her again and again to make her stop. Perhaps kissing is the best thing for crying, but it will not always stop it. What is the matter, mother? He said. Oh, Diamond, my darling, you have been so ill, she sobbed. No, mother dear, I've only been at the back of the North Wind, returned Diamond. I thought you were dead, said his mother. But that moment, the doctor came in. Just laughing at that. All right, here's Diamond in the bed. Oh, there, said the doctor with gentle cheerfulness. We're better today, I see. Then he drew his mother aside and told her not to talk to Diamond or to mind what he might say. I'm a doctor, but not in medicine, in psychology. But my dad's a medical doctor, and so I'm like, the doctor doesn't know about the back wind, the back of the North Wind. Some doctors do. I'm sure. Did C.S. Lewis have his doctorate? I don't know. He was so well read. And indeed, for he must keep as quiet as possible. And indeed, Diamond was not much inclined to talk, for he felt very strange and weak, which was little wonder, seeing that all the time he had been away, he had only sucked a few lumps of ice, and there could not be much nourishment in them. Remember when he was at the back of the North Wind, there were it was like the Arctic. He was, anyway. But anyway, I won't say what's dream and what's not. Now, while he's lying there getting strong again with chicken broth and other nice things, I will tell my readers what had been taking place at his home, for they ought to be told it. They might have forgotten that Miss Coleman was in a poor state of health. Now, there were 3 reasons for this. In the first place, her lungs were not strong. In the second place, there was a gentleman somewhere who had not behaved very well to her. Oh, wow. Wow. I forgot about that part of the story. Wow. I'm just making the sign of the cross and praying for any of you who are women who have had a gentleman not act too well towards not behaved very well towards you, or men who've experienced that with women. I pray God's full healing for your heart, that you make a full recovery and let go of the old and enjoy the new. God has something way better for you. Know that. I can know that. Anyway, in the third place, she had not anything particular to do. So Diamond's father is a coachman, drives a horse, because back then they didn't have cars. Drives a horse for this man, Mr. Coleman, and his daughter was sick. And now we know why she was sick. Is one, she didn't know what to do with her life. She didn't know her purpose. It wasn't activated in her, because God puts a purpose in everybody and puts spiritual gifts in everybody, whether they are of the faith or not. God endows us with that, and we're meant to use them for the good. But if we don't know that, she got sick, and she was also treated poorly by a man who was meant to treat her gentlemanly and well and communicative. I laugh. And the third thing was that her lungs weren't well. Well, that was back in London. I'm wearing my London shirt, and I don't know if they exercise very much, she ought to go hiking with me and exercise her lungs. Who knows? But anyway, this is a story. But George MacDonald was very poor for a lot of his life, I think. And so he tells, like Charles Dickens, of poor circumstances. Anyway, these 3 knots together are enough to make a lady very ill indeed. Of course, she could not help the first cause, but if the other 2 causes had not existed, that would have been of little consequence. She would only have had to be a little careful with her lungs, you know. The second, she could not help quite. Look at the bunny. Look, little baby bunny. He was here earlier, she was. It's a good sign if wild animals come close to you. Like look, my leg is so close. Yeah, I feel like Saint Francis of Assisi, you know. So cute. Okay. Look, already God has given us so much more than what we just left behind 1 minute ago. Oh, heartbreak. Sometimes we get used to that feeling, and you don't need to stay in it. Just because you experienced it in childhood and just because it's familiar, you don't need to stay in it. Let it go. Let it go. Anyway, I just made a 3-minute video on that. You can go look at it if you want to find it. I called it, Don't Be Afraid to Give Up the Good for the Great, which was a Kenny Rogers lyric that I remembered after I was uploading the video. Anyway, for the true good is the great. Okay. The second, she could not help quite, but if she had anything to do and had done it well, it would have been very difficult for any man to behave badly to her. I won't go into all this psychology because we could just be listening to the story with our kids, but kids ought to know this. If you set a higher standard of love for yourself, which Christ calls us to, he says, follow me, leave your father and mother and brother and sister and anything that's a less love for this love. And you will gain more fathers and mothers. Like I got C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and now we have George MacDonald and houses and everything. When you follow this, your eyes wake up to the true good, to the higher love, right? So I'm just going to repeat that sentence, just so you know, you guys. I didn't know this was going to be a video about how to get over a breakup. I just knew I had to come up here today and read this for an hour. God was putting it in my heart for me and for you, right? It's healing for all of us. The second, she could not help quite, but if she had anything to do, right? If she was in her purpose, her God-given purpose, and had done it well, because you keep learning how to do it well when you do it. Just do your best with excellence as you are where you are, right? It would have been very difficult for any man to behave badly to her. You don't even see it because you don't even notice because you're in your calling. You move on. You don't have time for men behaving badly. You really don't. You don't. And for this third cause of her illness, if she had anything to do that was worth doing, she might have borne his bad behavior, so that even that would not have made her ill. See? Wow. It's not always easy, I confess, to find something to do that is worth doing, but the most difficult things are constantly being done. And she might have found something if she had tried. Her fault lay in this, that she had not tried. But to be sure, her father and mother were to blame that they had never set her going. Only then again, wow. But Psalm 27:10 says, when my mother and father forsake me, the Lord lifts me up. God will lift you up to your purpose. He's lifting you up. He's beyond he and she, obviously. Psalm 27:10, he's lifting you up to your purpose right now through me. I'm giving you this truth through George MacDonald, through taking the time to do this, because God called me to do it for me and for you. For you. Don't doubt. This is for you. Like, this is amazing. All right, so her parents, they were to blame that they'd never set her going. Only then again, nobody had told her father and mother that they ought to set her going in that direction. So, as none of them would find it out themselves, North Wind had to teach them. We know that North Wind was very busy that night on which she left Diamond in the cathedral. She had, in a sense, been blowing through and through the Coleman's house the whole of the night. First, Miss Coleman's maid had left a chink of her mistress's window open, thinking she had shut it, and North Wind had wound a few of her hairs round the lady's throat, and she was considerably worse the next morning. She only does for good. She's not doing it for harm. Anyway, it's a paradox, but you'll see. Again, the ship which North Wind had sunk that very night belonged to Mr. Coleman. Nor will my readers understand what a heavy loss this was to him until I have informed them that he had been getting poorer and poorer for some time. He was not so successful in his speculations as he had been, for he speculated a great deal more than was right, and it was time he should be pulled up. It is a hard thing for a rich man to grow poor, but it is an awful thing for him to grow dishonest. You know, back in the old days, I just finished watching the movie North and South again by Elizabeth Glasgow. I read it often, and they would speculate, and sometimes people would just get in a hype. It's kind of like the stock market about something that they thought was a good thing, and people would swindle them out of all their hard-earned savings because they thought they would get rich quick. And so I guess there's a sort of honest way to do it if you keep making a good product and people keep buying it and they would invest in your company, or there's a dishonest way to pretend like you have this thing that's worth so much. And so it sounds like it's an awful thing for him to grow dishonest, as some kinds of speculation lead a man deep into dishonesty before he thinks what he is about. Right? In the movie and in the book North and South, with Richard Armitage, who played King Thorin, of course, in The Hobbit, after he had already made North and South. I was like, yes, okay, I'll watch The Hobbit. I mean, I love Tolkien anyway. He's a second father to me as well. Or, I don't know. Second to God. God is my first father. Anyway, he wouldn't speculate in the book. He had higher principles, and his father actually came to an early demise. You can read about it. I won't talk about it in case there's kids around. Because he speculated and got swindled himself. And so his son did not, even though he risked everything by not speculating. He risked losing all the wealth that he had. I won't tell you what he gained, though. It's something really good. Poverty will not make a man worthless. He may be worth a great deal more when he is poor than when he was rich. See? Same thing. I was wondering why I was called to watch that again, because I never want to watch anything that I'm not called to watch. Some people say it's like guarding your eye gates and your ear gates and your mouth. Like, do everything in sobriety with love. Know that what you put in is what you get out, right? And so put in good things as best as you can. Ask God to help you. I heard this woman say supernatural weight loss, and it's like, well, you know, if we do need to lose weight, then yes, ask God, ask the Creator. That is supernatural when you ask God to fill you with love, so you'll stop believing that you're not worth good, nutritious food, even though it might be hard to grow or come by or whatever. Blueberries. A thing of blueberries yesterday in the store was $9. So I have frozen blueberries from Costco anyway. That was just at the grocery store, my normal grocery store. $9, not even organic, you guys. It was ridiculous. It's twice as much as normal, at least twice or more. Okay, so poverty will not make a man worthless. He may be worth a great deal more when he is poor than when he was rich. But dishonesty goes very far indeed to make a man of no value, a thing to be thrown out in the dust hole of the creation, like a bit of a broken basin or a dirty rag. So North Wind had to look after Mr. Coleman and try to make an honest man of him. So she sank the ship, which was his last venture, and he was what himself and his wife and the world called ruined. He was ruined. I was just getting that verse. Jesus says, abide in me. Apart from me, you can do nothing. A branch. I am the vine, you are the branches. A branch, if you break off a branch, it can't keep bearing fruit by itself. We have to abide. And so Mr. Coleman was getting outside of that, right? Understand the principle. In Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis talks about how so many people are being made into Christians, and they are Christ's, and they don't even call themselves Christians. They're abiding in Christ, and they don't yet call themselves. And some people that still call themselves Christians are not abiding in him, have broken off and gone dishonest ways and tried to go their own ways, or gone into religious egotism, and they're still calling themselves Christians. But Jesus will say, many of you call me Lord, Lord, and I will say, depart from me, I never knew you. You didn't stay in the vine. All right? Ask God to help you. Don't be afraid. Ask Jesus to help you. Okay, nor was this all yet, for on board that vessel, Miss Coleman's lover, the person she was dating, I guess, was a passenger. And when the news came that the vessel had gone down and that all on board had perished, we may be very sure she did not think the loss of her fine house and garden and furniture the greatest misfortune in the world. She didn't really care. The person she loved was on board that ship. Miss Coleman is the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, right? So they're talking about her. I forgot her first name. Of course, the trouble did not end with Mr. Coleman and his family. Nobody can suffer alone, right? His dishonesty had to bring him to correction. Well, guess what? Diamond's good father and mother, they work for the Colemans, or Mr. Diamond's father does. And so it looks like he's going to be affected by this bad behavior of this man. Of course, nobody can suffer alone. When the cause of suffering is most deeply hidden in the heart, and nobody knows anything about it but the man himself, he must be a great and a good man indeed, such as few of us have known. When the cause of suffering is most deeply hidden in the heart, and nobody knows anything about it but the man himself, he must be a great and good man indeed, such as few of us have known, if the pain inside him does not make him behave so as to cause all about him to be more or less uncomfortable. But when a man brings money troubles on himself, so I think that's about not complaining, when God is putting you through the holy fire, the holy purifying fire. I admit I cried yesterday when I was making a video. I haven't posted it yet. But when a man brings money troubles on himself by making haste to be rich, then most of the people he has to do with must suffer in the same way with himself. Wow. The elm tree which north wind blew down that very night, as if small and great trials were to be gathered in one heap, crushed Miss Coleman's pretty summer house. Just so the fall of Mr. Coleman crushed the little family that lived over his coach house and stable. All right, so his fall is crushing Diamond and his father and mother. We'll see. Before Diamond was well enough to be taken home, there was no home for him to go to. Wow. Mr. Coleman, or his creditors, for I do not know the particulars, had sold house, carriage, horse, furniture, and everything. He and his wife and daughter and Mrs. Crump had gone to live in a small house in Hoxton, where he would be unknown and whence he could walk to his place of business in the city. Right, in London, probably. For he was not an old man and hoped yet to retrieve his fortunes. Let us hope that he lived to retrieve his honesty, the tail of which had slipped through his fingers to the very last joint, if not beyond it. Of course, Diamond's father had nothing to do for a time, but it was not so hard for him to have nothing to do as it was for Miss Coleman, the daughter, right? He wrote to his wife that if her sister would keep her there till he got a place, it would be better for them, and he would be greatly obliged to her. Meantime, the gentleman who had bought the house had allowed his furniture to remain where it was for a little while. Well, we'll see. I hope he truly was a gentleman that bought the house. Diamond's aunt was quite willing to keep them as long as she could, and indeed, Diamond was not yet well enough to be moved with safety. When he had recovered so far as to be able to go out, one day his mother got her sister's husband, who had a little pony cart, to carry them down to the seashore and leave them there for a few hours. Wow, a pony cart. He had some business to do farther on at Ramsgate, and Ramsgate is in Pride and Prejudice, I know just from that, and would pick them up as he returned. A whiff of the sea air would do them both good, she said, and she thought, besides, she could best tell Diamond what had happened if she had him quite to herself. Chapter 13, The Seaside. Diamond and his mother sat down upon the edge of the rough grass that bordered the sand. The sun was just far enough past its highest not to shine in their eyes. And when they looked eastward, a sweet little wind blew on their left side and comforted the mother without letting her know what it was that comforted her. Away before them stretched the sparkling waters of the ocean, every wave of which flashed out in its own delight. Look at the ocean. Back in the face of the great sun, which looked down from the stillness of its blue house with glorious silent face upon its flashing children. The waves, you know. On each hand, the shore rounded outward, forming a little bay. There were no white cliffs here, as farther north and south, and the place was rather dreary. But the sky got at them so much the better. Not a house, not a creature was within sight. Aww. Dry sand was about their feet. And under them, thin, wiry grass that just managed to grow out of the poverty-stricken shore. Oh dear, said Diamond's mother, with a deep sigh. It's a sad world. Is it? Said Diamond. I didn't know. How should you know, child? You've been too well taken care of, I trust. Right, here they are by the sea. Which, this is so beautiful. Look at that. That's where we are right now. With God, we're just like this. Looking at the sea, listening to this book. Who knew? Like they say there's no such thing as magic. Magic is from the word magus, which is just strong, like ability. That's God. God is the Almighty, right? This is beautiful. It's more beautiful than any kind of magic people try to, anyway. I don't recommend any of the lower paths. Only God. Love, right? God and God's love. Oh yes, I have returned, Diamond. I'm so sorry. I thought you were taken care of too. I thought my father took care of you. I will ask him about it. I think he must have forgotten. Dear boy, said his mother, your father's the best man in the world. So I thought, returned Diamond, with triumph. I was sure of it. Well, doesn't he take very good care of you? Yes, he does, answered his mother, bursting into tears. But who's to take care of him? Right? Her faith is wavering a bit, right? We'll see. And how is he to take care of us if he's got nothing to eat himself? Oh dear, said Diamond with a gasp. Hasn't he got anything to eat? Oh, I must go home to him. No, child. He's not come to that yet, but what's to become of us, I don't know. Do any of us know, right? Are you very hungry, Mother? There's the basket. I thought you put something to eat in it. Oh, you darling stupid. She's not calling him stupid, but, I think, anyway, it's like a term of endearment. Anyway. I didn't say I was hungry, returned his mother, smiling through her tears. Then I don't understand you at all, said Diamond. Do tell me what's the matter. There are people in the world who have nothing to eat, Diamond. Then I suppose they don't stop in it any longer. They what you call die, don't they? Yes, they do. How would you like that? I don't know, I never tried, but I suppose they go where they get something to eat. Like enough, they don't want it, said his mother petulantly. That's all right, then, said Diamond, thinking, I dare say, more than he chose to put into words. Is it, though? Poor boy, how little you know about things. Mr. Coleman's lost all his money, and your father has nothing to do, and we shall have nothing to eat by and by. Are you sure, Mother? Oh, this is so good. This is from the 1800s, and George MacDonald's giving us this tool. This is like the highest psychological tool. Are you sure? Is that really true? Is that really true? Is that really true that we shall have nothing to eat? We haven't yet come to that, right? Sure of what? Sure that we shall have nothing to eat. No, thank heaven, I'm not sure of it. I hope not. Then I can't understand it, Mother. There's a piece of gingerbread in the basket. I know. Oh, you little bird. You have no more sense than a sparrow that picks what it wants and never thinks of the winter and the frost and the snow. Jesus said that he cares more for us than 5 sparrows. I think it was 5 or 3 sparrows. I can't remember, but it's still, you are of much more worth than the sparrow. So don't worry. He said, look at the birds. They don't worry about what they eat or what they will drink, because God takes care of them. Ah, yes, I see, but the birds get through the winter, don't they? Some of them fall dead on the ground. They must die sometime. They wouldn't like to be birds always, would you, Mother? What a child is it? It is, thought his mother, but she said nothing, right? Sometimes the children are the prophets. Oftentimes. Jesus said we must be like a little child to enter into the kingdom of heaven. What does that mean? Go look. Diamond showing us. If anyone asks you what that means, tell them to listen to this whole book or read it themselves. It's free online. I put it in the comments, in the description usually. Oh, now I remember, Diamond went on. Father told me that day I went to Epping Forest with him, that the rose bushes and the may bushes and the holly bushes were the birds' barns, for there were the hips and the haws and the holly berries, all ready for the winter. Yes, that's all very true. So you see the birds are provided for, but there are no such barns for you and for me. For me, Diamond. Ain't there? He says, right? No, we've got to work for our bread. Then let's go and work, said Diamond, getting up. It's no use. We've not got anything to do. Then let's wait. Then we shall starve. No, there's the basket. Do you know, Mother, I think I shall call the basket the barn. Wow. And it's 33 minutes into this. That's when Jesus died. He died and rose again. He conquered starvation and poverty and death and sin for us, that we may put on the robe of his righteousness before God. And then you have this abundant life anyway. And everything is abundant after you have that. What does it gain a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? But what have you lost if you gain your soul and you lose the world? Kierkegaard said that. Elliot and I talked about it. My friend Elliot. Either or was the name of that book that's in. No, there's the basket. Do you know, Mother, I think I shall call that basket the barn. It's not a very big one. And when it's empty, where are we then? At Auntie's cupboard, her pantry, right? Returned Diamond promptly. But we can't eat Auntie's things all up and leave her to starve. No, we'll go back to Father before that. He'll have found a cupboard somewhere by that time. See, he has faith. How do you know that? I don't know it, but I haven't got even a cupboard, and I've always had plenty to eat. I've heard you say I had too much sometimes, but I tell you that's because I've had a cupboard for you, child. And when yours was empty, Auntie opened hers. But that can't go on. How do you know? I think there must be a big cupboard somewhere. Out of which the little cupboards are filled, Mother. Well, I wish I could find the door of that cupboard. You know, it's just like when the woman at the well, Jesus says that everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again. But if you come drink the water I give you, you'll never thirst again. In you will be a spring of living water, right? Anyway, said his mother, but the same moment she stopped and was silent for a good while. I cannot tell whether Diamond knew what she was thinking, but I think I know. She had heard something at her church the day before which came back upon her, something like this, for she hadn't to eat for tomorrow as well as for today. And that was not wanted. That what was not wanted couldn't be missed. You have enough for today. That's enough, right? So instead of saying anything more, she stretched out her hand for the basket, and she and Diamond had their dinner, and Diamond did enjoy it. For the drive and the fresh air had made him quite hungry, and he did not, like his mother, trouble himself about what they should dine off that day week, right? The fact was, he had lived so long without any food at all at the back of the north wind, which is like fasting if you learn how to fast in the correct way, right? That he knew quite well that food was not essential to existence, that in fact, under certain circumstances, people could live without it well enough. You know, if someone was sick and had a fever and they couldn't digest the food and they just had water for a while or vitamins or whatever, you know. His mother did not speak much during their dinner. After it was over, she helped him to walk about a little, but he was not able for much and soon got tired. He did not get fretful, though. He was too glad of having the sun and the wind again to fret, because he could not run about. He lay down on the dry sand, and his mother covered him with a shawl. She then sat by his side and took a bit of work from her pocket. You know, like they would do needlework and stuff back then. Or like darn socks or whatever, so that they could keep wearing them. Socks. All right, so he's on the shawl, covered with the shawl. But Diamond felt rather sleepy and turned on his side and gazed sleepily over the sand. A few yards off, he saw something fluttering. "What's that, Mother?" he said. "Only a bit of paper," she answered. "It flutters more than a bit of paper would, I think," said Diamond. "I'll go and see if you like," said his mother. "My eyes are none of the best." So she rose. Rise, open your soul eyes, right? Rose. Just like Jesus rose from the dead. You can rise from all that's behind you. Put your hand to the plow and don't look back. And don't worry. Jesus says, don't let your heart be tossed about in John 14. She rose and went and found that they were both right, for it was a little book, partly buried in the sand, but several of its leaves were clear of the sand, and these the wind kept blowing about in a very flutterful manner. She took it up and brought it to Diamond. "What is it, Mother?" she asked. "Some nursery rhymes, I think," she answered. "I'm too sleepy," said Diamond. "Do read some of them to me." "Yes, I will," she said, and began one. "But this is such nonsense," she said again. "I will try to find a better one." She turned the leaves, searching, but 3 times with sudden puffs the wind blew the leaves rustling back to the same verses. "Do read that one," said Diamond, who seemed to be of the same mind as the wind. It sounded very nice. I'm sure it is a good one. So his mother thought it might amuse him, though she couldn't find any sense in it. She never thought he might understand it, although she could not. Now, I do not exactly know what the mother read, but this is what Diamond heard, or thought afterwards that he had heard. He was, however, as I have said, very sleepy, and when he thought he understood the verses, he may have been only dreaming better ones. This is how they went. "I know a river whose waters run asleep, run, run ever, singing in the shallows, dumb in the hollows, sleeping so deep, and all the swallows that dip their feathers in the hollows or in the shallows are the merriest swallows of all. For the nests they bake, with the clay they cake, with the waters they shake, with their wings that rake, the water out of the shallows or the hollows will hold together in any weather, and so the swallows are the merriest fellows." and have the merriest children, and are built so narrow, like the head of an arrow, to cut the air, and just go where the nicest water is flowing, and the nicest dust is blowing. For each so narrow, like head of an arrow, is only a barrow to carry the mud he makes, from the nicest water flowing, and the nicest dust that is blowing, to build his nest. For her he loves best, with the nicest cakes, which the sunshine bakes. All for their married children, and so callow, with beaks that follow, gaping and hollow, wider and wider, after their father and after their mother, the food provider, who brings them a spider or a worm, the poor hider, down in the earth, so there's no dearth, for the beaks as yellow as the buttercups growing beside the flowing of the singing river, always and ever. Growing and blowing, for fast as the sheep, awake or asleep, crop them and crop them, they cannot stop them, but up they creep, and on they go blowing. And so with the daisies, the little white praises, right, the daisies, they grow and they blow, and they spread out their crown, and they praise the sun, and when he goes down, their praising is done. And they fold up their crown, and they sleep every one, till over the plain he's shining amain. And they're at it again, praising and praising, such low songs raising, that no one hears them, but the sun who rears them. And the sheep that bite them are the quietest sheep, awake or asleep, with the merriest bleats. And the little lambs they forget to eat, for the frolic in their feet. And the lambs and their dams are the whitest sheep, with the woolliest wool, and the longest wool, and the trailingest tails, and they shine like snow in the grasses that grow by the singing river that sings forever. And the sheep and the lambs are merry forever, because the river sings and they drink it. And the lambs and their dams are quiet and white, because of their diet. For what they bite is buttercups yellow, and daisies white, and grass as green as the river can make it, with the wind as mellow to kiss it and shake it, as never was seen, but here in the hollows, beside the river, where all the swallows are merriest of fellows, for the nests they make with the clay they cake, in the sunshine bake, till they are like bone as dry as the wind, as a marble stone, so firm they bind the grass and the clay that dries in the wind, the sweetest wind that blows by the river, flowing forever. But never you find whence comes the wind that blows on the hollows and over the shallows, where dip the swallows, alive in its blows. Oops. Is it okay? I moved an ant, but it seems okay. Anyway, and over the shallows where dips the swallows, alive it blows, and the life as it goes, awake or asleep, into river that sings as it flows, and the life it blows into the sheep. Awake or asleep with the woolliest wool and the trailingest tails, and it never fails, gentle and cool, to wave the wool and to toss the grass as the lambs and the sheep over it pass and tug and bite with their teeth so white. Then with the sweep of their trailing tails, smooth it again, and it grows amain, and amain it grows, and the wind as it blows tosses the swallows over the hollows and down on the shallows, till every feather doth shake and quiver, and all their feathers go all together, blowing the life and the joy so rife into the swallows that skim the shallows, and have the yellowest children, for the wind that blows is the life of the river, flowing forever, that washes the grasses still as it passes, and feeds the daisies, the little white praises, and buttercups bonny, so golden and sunny, with butter and honey, that whiten the sheep, awake or asleep, that nibble and bite, and grow whiter than white, and merry and quiet on the sweet diet fed by the river, and tossed forever by the wind that tosses the swallow that crosses over the shallows, dipping his wings to gather the water and bake the cake, that the wind shall make, as hard as a bone, as dry as a stone. It's all in the wind that blows from behind, and all in the river that flows forever, and all in the grasses, and the white daisies, and the merry sheep awake or sleep, and the happy swallows skimming the shallows, and it's all in the wind that blows from behind. See, the back of the north wind. Here, Diamond became aware that his mother had stopped reading. "Why don't you go on, mother dear?" he asked. "It's such nonsense," said his mother. "I believe it would go on forever." "That's just what it did," said Diamond. "What did?" she asked. "Why, the river. It's almost the very tune it used to sing." The river at the back of the north wind, you know. It's in the last the last chapters we read, right? And believe it or not, one time, and I'll be very brief, I was in a wilderness class, and I had brought this book with me, and I hadn't got to this part. And they asked us in this wilderness class to go sit by the river and write the song that the river was singing. So I just got quiet and I prayed. I asked God. It's just recognizing that I was recognizing it was coming just straight from God. Only God's voice through all of creation, right? Because it says all of creation groans, waiting to be restored. And it says in the Psalms that the trees sing. And I started singing in the video 60 of the Mysticism, Studying the Nature and Development of Spiritual Consciousness by Evelyn Underhill. I started singing because I know about trees. Anyway, I wrote it down, and then that night when I was in my tent, because you have nothing to do, you have no TV or anything, we didn't have even phones to watch then, you weren't meant to. And so I was reading this book with a flashlight or something. I just remember I got to this poem and I sent it to my mom. I did have a phone to take a picture. I'm like, "Mom, look at my poem," because she knows me. She knows I wouldn't lie, right? This poem I wrote this morning, this poem that's in George MacDonald's book from the 1800s. It's amazing because, anyway, it's all over all my videos. In the video about Plato talking about... 2 different Plato quotes I have talk about this. He says it in poetic language, why this would be so. But anyway, his mother was frightened, for she thought the fever was coming on again, so she did not contradict him. "Who made that poem?" asked Diamond. "I don't know," she answered. "Some silly woman for her children, I suppose. And then thought it good enough to print." "She must have been at the back of the north wind some time or other anyhow," said Diamond. "She couldn't have got a hold of it anywhere else. That's just how it went." And he began to chant bits of it here and there, but his mother said nothing for fear of making him worse. And she was very glad indeed when she saw her brother-in-law jogging along in his little cart. They lifted Diamond in and got up themselves and got away, and away they went, home again, home again, home again, as Diamond sang. Home. Anyway, I have a whole list of songs about longing for home. C.S. Lewis said, "If I find in myself a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. Not that we ought to go there, but we're sent here as ambassadors. Our home is heaven, right? And we get, the kingdom of God is within us. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We get to bring that heaven here. That's our gift to the world. Like what we're doing right in this moment. You are by participating in this, by letting it come into your heart. Ask God. I can't imagine anyone seeing this as evil, but, just ask God always. Test the spirits, no matter what. Because Mr. Coleman could have been somewhat good and then went bad. And then the north wind, which is like the Holy Spirit, is bringing him back to the good if he'll take it. Okay, so home again, home again, home again, as Diamond sang, but he soon grew quiet, and before they reached Sandwich, he was fast asleep and dreaming of the country at the back of the north wind. Chapter 14, Old Diamond. All right, that's the horse. After this, Diamond recovered so fast. After this, Diamond recovered so fast that in a few days he was quite able to go home as soon as his father had a place for them to go to. Now his father, having saved a little money and finding that no situation offered itself, had been thinking over a new plan. A strange occurrence it was, which turned his thoughts in that direction. He had a friend in the Bloomsbury region who lived by letting out cabs and horses to the cabmen. This man, happening to meet him one day as he was returning from an unsuccessful application, for work, said to him, "Why don't you set up for yourself now, in the cab line, I mean?" "I haven't enough for that," answered Diamond's father. "You must have saved a goodish bit, I should think. Just come home with me now and look at a horse I can let you have cheap. I bought him only a few weeks ago, thinking he'd do for a hansom, but I was wrong. He's got bone enough for a wagon, but a wagon ain't a hansom. He ain't got enough go for a hansom. You see, parties as take hansoms want to go like the wind, and he ain't got wind enough." All right, here's wind again. Guess who this horse is going to be? I'm guessing right now. I forgot, right? But it says Old Diamond. So young Diamond, the boy, was named after their beloved horse, Old Diamond, that belonged to Mr. Coleman, but that Diamond's father would drive, For he ain't so young as he once was, but for a four-wheeler as takes families and their luggages, he'd be the very horse. He'd carry a small house any day. I bought him cheap, and I'll sell him cheap." "Oh, I don't want him," said Diamond's father. "A body must have time to think over an affair of so much importance. And there's a cab, too. That would come to a deal of money." "I could fit you there, I dare say," said his friend. "But come and look at the animal anyhow." "Since I lost my old pair, as was Mr. Coleman's," said Diamond's father, turning to accompany the cabmaster, "I ain't almost got the heart to look a horse in the face." "It's 1,000 pities to part man and horse." "So it is," said his friend sympathetically, because his friend knew horses, right? But what was the ex-coachman's delight when, on going into the stable where his friend led him, he found the horse he wanted him to buy was no other than his own old Diamond, grown very thin and bony and long-legged, as if they had been doing what they could to fit him for handsome work. "He ain't a handsome horse," said Diamond's father indignantly. "Well, you're right, he ain't handsome, but he's a good 'un," said his owner. "Who says he ain't handsome?" "He's one of the handsomest horses a gentleman's coachman ever drove. Look at this. Oh, I love this. Wow. Who knew? I didn't know God could comfort my heart so much by coming up here for you guys. I needed this part of the story for sure right now. And I hope it's so good for your soul as well. Obviously, I wouldn't be putting this out on video. I'd just be sitting here reading this to myself, looking at the view. Why not share it, Even though I just woke up and I don't have makeup or whatever. I put some stuff under my eyes, but... Anyway, who says he ain't handsome? He's one of the handsomest horses a gentleman's coachman ever drove, said Diamond's father, remarking to himself under his breath, though I say it as shouldn't, for he did not feel inclined all at once to confess that he was his own old horse, that his own old horse could have sunk so low. "Well," said his friend, "all I say is, there's an animal for you, as strong as a church, and I'll go like a train, lestways a parley," he added, correcting himself. But the coachman had a lump in his throat and tears in his eyes, for the old horse, hearing his voice, had turned his long neck, and when his old friend went up to him and laid his hand on his side, he whinnied for joy and laid his big head on his master's breast. This settled the matter. The coachman's arms were round the horse's neck in a moment, and he fairly broke down and cried. See, look, he was in a bad situation, and now he's in a much better situation. He'll work for himself. He'll have his own cab and just pull for fares, right? Anyway, the cabmaster had never been so fond of a horse himself as to hug him like that, but he saw in a moment how it was, and he must have been a good-hearted fellow, for I never heard of such an idea of coming into the head of any other man with a horse to sell, instead of putting something on to the price because he was now pretty sure of selling him. But he didn't. He actually took £1 off what he had meant to ask for him, saying to himself, it was a shame to part old friends. Like, you don't want to part, old friends. Take a pound off. That was a lot of money back then. Diamond's father, as soon as he came to himself, turned and asked how much he wanted for the horse. I see your old friend, said the owner. It's my own old Diamond. I liked him far the best of the pair. I think he had two, that's why. 2 horses. This is one of them. Though the other was good. You ain't got him too, have you? No, nothing in the stable to match him there. I believe you, said the coachman, but you'll be wanting a long price for him, I know. No, not so much. I bought him cheap, and as I say, he ain't for my work. The end of it was that Diamond's father bought old Diamond again, along with a 4-wheeled cab, and as there were some rooms to be had over the stable, he took them, wrote to his wife to come home, and set up as a cabman. Right? So they're back, living over the stable. This is where Diamond lived before. Okay, the Muse, chapter 15. It was late in the afternoon when Diamond and his mother and the baby reached London. Look, I was told to wear my London shirt. I mean, I asked God what to wear. I know that sounds strange, but London. I had it hanging up with my workout clothes, so... and my pajamas, actually. I think it was with them. Anyway, it was late in the afternoon when Diamond and his mother and the baby reached London. What's the baby? Do they have a baby? I was so full of Diamond that I forgot to tell you. Okay, here, a baby had arrived in the meantime. His father was waiting for them with his own cab, but they had not told Diamond who the horse was, for his father wanted to enjoy the pleasure of his surprise when he found it out. He got in with his mother without looking at the horse, and his father, having put up Diamond's carpet bag and his mother's little trunk, got upon the box himself and drove off, and Diamond was quite proud of riding home in his father's own carriage. But when he got to the Mews, he could not help being a little dismayed at first, and if he had never been to the back of the North Wind, I am afraid he would have cried a little, but instead of that, he said to himself, it was a fine thing. All of the old furniture was there. And instead of helping his mother to be miserable at the change, he began to find out all the advantages of the place, for every place has some advantages, and they are always better worth knowing than the disadvantages. Certainly the weather was depressing, for a thick, dull, persistent rain was falling by the time they reached home. But happily the weather is very changeable, and besides there was a good fire burning in the room which their neighbor with the drunken husband had attended to for them. And the tea things were put out, and the kettle was boiling on the fire, and with a good fire, and tea and bread and butter. Look, a new cupboard. Things cannot be said to be miserable. Diamond's father, I had this gluten-free waffle the other day with butter and jelly, and it just reminded me of childhood so much, because I never eat carbs usually. But anyway, not like that. But you can't be miserable. It's like the story of Frances and her bread and butter. I can't remember the name of that. But anyway, Diamond's father and mother were, notwithstanding, rather miserable, and Diamond began to feel a kind of darkness beginning to spread over his own mind. But the same moment he said to himself, this will never do. I can't give in to this. I cannot. Look, you have to have discipline in your mind. Here's the picture. I've been to the back of the North Wind. Things go right there, and so I must try to get things to go right here. I've got to fight the miserable things. They shan't make me miserable if I can help it, right? They only intimidate you and try to make you miserable. They can only tempt you into misery. My friend Elliot got an Oscar nomination for his song, Do You Miss Me, Miss Misery, right? But it's time to go away from that. He has a song called Between the Bars where he's protecting you from that. Anyway, he's trying in that. He's doing the struggle of trying to get out of the misery. I do not mean that he thought these very words. They are perhaps too grown up for him to have thought, but they represent the kind of thing that was in his heart and his head. And when the heart and head go together, nothing can stand before them. I learned from a mystic, this is just one way to understand the verse, that it says, whenever 2 or 3 are gathered, there am I in their midst. When your head and your heart are gathered with your spirit man, the Holy Spirit of Christ in you, then Christ is present in that, right? And also, when other people are around us like that. Here's a new picture. Of course, it's the same. I'm glad you like it, my dear. Oh, what nice bread and butter this is, said Diamond. And when the heart and head go together, nothing can stand before them. I'm hearing that Ecclesiastes verse where a strand of 2 strings or 3 cannot be broken. It's you, me, and Jesus Christ, right? If you will. I'm glad you like it, my dear, said his father. I bought the butter myself at the little shop around the corner. It's very nice. Thank you, father. Oh, there's baby Waken. I'll take him. Sit still, Diamond, said his mother. Go on with your bread and butter. You're not strong enough to lift him yet. And so she took the baby herself and set him on her knee. Then Diamond began to amuse him and went on till the little fellow was shrieking with laughter, for the baby's world was his mother's arms. And the drizzling rain and the dreary mews and even his father's troubled face could not touch him. What cared baby for the loss of 100 situations? Who cares, right? Yet neither father nor mother thought him hard-hearted because he crowed and laughed in the middle of their troubles. On the contrary, his crowing and laughing were infectious. His little heart was so full of merriment that it could not hold it all, and it ran over into theirs. Father and mother began to laugh too, and Diamond laughed till he had a fit of coughing, which frightened his mother and made them all stop. His father took the baby, and his mother put him to bed. But it was indeed a change to them all, not only from Sandwich, but from their old place. Instead of the great river, where the huge barges with their mighty brown and yellow sails were tacking from side to side like little pleasure skiffs, where the long thin boats shot past with 8 and sometimes 12 rowers, their windows now looked upon a dirty paved yard, and there was no garden more for Diamond to run into when he pleased, with gay flowers about his feet and solemn sun-filled trees over his head. Neither was there a wooden wall at the back of his bed, with a hole in it for North Wind to come in at when she liked. Indeed, there was such a high wall, and there were so many houses about the mews, that North Wind seldom got into the place at all, except when something must be done, and she had a grand cleaning out, like other housewives, while the partition at the head of Diamond's new bed only divided it from the room occupied by a cabman, who drank too much beer and came home chiefly to quarrel with his wife and pinch his children. It was dreadful to Diamond to hear the scolding and the crying, but it could not make him miserable, because he had been at the back of the North Wind. So have we, you guys. So have we. Through George MacDonald, who has, and through our own experiences. To surrender all of them to God, and you'll be at the back of the North Wind, right quick. If my reader find it hard to believe that Diamond should be so good, he must remember that he had been to the back of the North Wind. If he never knew a boy so good, did he ever know a boy that had been to the back of the North Wind? It was not in the least strange of Diamond to behave as he did. On the contrary, it was thoroughly sensible of him. We shall see how he got on. All right, the next chapter, Diamond makes a beginning. Chapter 16. I've got to go. Got to take my kid to school, and it's been an hour. All right, I wish you so much love. Thanks for being here.